Welcome back to Dolly Into Meaning. Today we're going to go over the first 5 minutes of the movie Brick, the first feature film of Rian Johnson, how he kicked off his career and started his great journey into film. So, we're going to go over the inciting incident, which is so important in the movie, and how he kicks that off and how he sets that up as a director with shot selection. We're going to also talk about how he sets the tone and the pacing, how he tells you what kind of movie this is, which guess what? It's just kind of like Knives Out. It's very similar. It's a mystery. It's a detective mystery, and that's what we're going to be talking about. Let's dive into and break down the story. So if you haven't seen the story, what this is about, this is a film noir set in high school where Joseph Gordan Levitt's character, who's Brendan, is investigating the murder of his ex-girlfriend, and who's been involved in some drug dealings at the high school. So before the movie has even started, before we see the first frame of the movie, we're already seeing the title cards and the titles of the production companies that helped make the movie. And we're already getting a hint as to what kind of movie it is. It's kind of a Western, but a noir Western sound with this little bell that's going on, this little this metallic kind of banging. And that's great. It tells you what kind of story it is already before the movie starts, that it's a noir. It sets you in that kind of space. And so the first shots of the movie are close-ups. And he does this a lot in this movie. He uses the close-up, which is kind of confusing. It doesn't give you a lot of information when you first are introduced to a scene. And so we're getting a close-up of, first, shoes. And it's Brendan's shoes, but we don't know who he is yet, and we haven't been introduced to him yet. But those shoes are imprinted in our mind. It's an important detail that's played on later on in this first 5 minutes. And so what happens is then we cut to a close-up of a face, Brendan's face, and we do a rack focus so that we can finally kind of see his features. And so we spent these first two shots being a little bit confused about where we are. And that is interesting, but the confusion doesn't last long, and it can't last long. You can't have your audience be confused of what's going on. And so we cut to this wide shot, finally introducing us to the location that we're in, and that usually happens earlier in a scene. And basically what this does is, this is the inciting incident. We're 40 seconds into the movie, and already the movie is kicking off and igniting what's going to happen through the rest of the plot. We see someone has been murdered in this storm drench. We know where we are now, and that is key and important. And then we have all these shots that are kind of heightening the emotionality of the moment. And so we're cutting to close-ups, and we're getting closer and closer to the subjects that we're seeing. First, it's just of her legs, and we start to zoom in, and then we cut to him, and the zoom in motion continues in on him. And so we're getting closer and closer to these little subjects that we're seeing, and the emotion is kicking in, and he's getting emotional. We can, even though he's not showing it, the camera moves are telling us that he's feeling very emotional about this and sad about it. And then it's the last shot of this scene, and it's of her wrist and her bracelet. And this is a key detail that the audience is supposed to focus on and pay attention to. And there's nothing else that they can do. There's nothing fancy going on here. And so we have to pay attention to her bracelet. And then what happens is we're cutting back in time here. So we're going back to 2 days earlier. And like in Knives Out, we talked about flashbacks in Knives Out. And like in Knives Out, Rian Johnson is already practicing his craft in his very first film, and adds a tool to cut us back in time. He adds this bell. From the past, cut into this future, and it's the bell of the school bell. And what's great about it is it creates a good crisp cut into the new time that we're going to be in. And then we cut to that time, and it's kind of like a match cut, except it's not quite visually the same, but it's her wrist, same girl's wrist, she's alive, and we see her bracelet, so we can distinguish who it is, even though we don't see her face at all. And what's really important here is he is what he's doing is he's basically showing the audience that it is in the past without telling them anything. And there's that adage that they use in film a lot: show, don't tell. And that's what's great about this moment, is he's showing you something, and then because that would be too unclear to be left unsaid and not to be specified, then there's a few frames later, maybe a couple seconds later, and it says 2 days earlier. And so that's important, that's how it works. And what she's doing, what this hand is doing, it's putting a note in his locker. And then what happens is we go down below to the feet, and a man walks up into frame, and it's got the same shoes that we were established earlier. They set up in a clear detail before so that they could have this cool moment here where we're just looking at his shoes and we're not seeing his body. And what this is doing is creating an interesting visual so that the audience knows that this isn't, they're interested, and it's not just like a run-of-the-mill coverage. It's different, it's unique, and it's a unique voice that Rian Johnson has. We can see what's happening because the note is dropped, and that is key. And basically what's happening here is he's using negative space very well. And then what happens is he drops the note, so we're given hints about what is actually happening. And then what happens is they show the note, and he opens it up, and it says a street intersection. And then we cut to that street intersection right there. Another like graphic cut that's more of a conceptual cut about this is what we're going to, and then this is where we are. It's creating a hook saying this is a mystery, this is interesting, this is different, and then we pulls them into the moment that wants you to make the cut to the next scene. And so he's creating a moment like that for the cut. And I want to talk about the pacing of this movie. Now, there are these handles on these shots. Especially in the phone booth, when things are going on, whole shots could have been cut and it would have been faster. And I understand what Rian Johnson is trying to do here is he's trying to create this pacing here, which is a slow, methodical pacing to the film. And you know what? That's his prerogative, it's his film. But I just want to take a step back and say this didn't have a lot of commercial success, it had some, but like it made it more of an indie film instead of a mainstream film. And so if the pacing had picked up a little bit, if he got rid of some shots, he cut the handles on it, the edges, and cut it in a little bit and tightened things up, this might have done a little bit better in the box office. But that's maybe not what he was trying to do. He was just starting off and creating a name for himself. But so what happens here is he answers the phone, and we're looking at this interesting angle of him where we're seeing him through the glass and we don't see much of him. And as this conversation is happening, she's talking and she's getting emotional about something. And right as that emotion, it's a very subtle, could be easy to miss. And so what they do is the music score helps out on this. And it's a little bit of piano, high-pitched piano keys.
That's good.
And that lets you know to pay attention and to hear what she's saying and how she's saying it. She's very distressed. And then what happens is this car comes into frame and scares her, and she runs away, and the car drives off. And I want to talk about this shot where the cigarette butt is flicked out of the car and how they do this shot. And it's interesting to think about. So the camera's looking at the floor, and then it pushes back, and the cigarette butt is on the floor, already there. It wasn't just flicked out by the car. It was already there the whole time, and that's why they did the pull back out, so that it would be easy to shoot and easy to cover this shot. Now, this next scene of the movie, this location is used throughout the movie, And it's really smart of him to do that. This is a low budget film. If you're reusing a location a lot, it creates a good budget save. And so that they can just go back to this scene, go back to the same location and just shoot all the stuff of that location in the same same day, and get it all done. And if you're doing an indie budget film, you want to try to think of everything in how can I put this all in one location. And so basically, I want to talk about the coverage of the scene. It's covered in 2 or 3 shots. Very easy. It's one on Brendan as he's looking down at Brain on the floor, and they're talking, and then one on Brain, a profile of Brain, and they're both cheated so that they're looking kind of towards each other, although Brain isn't quite looking directly at Brendan. And what's great about that is Brendan has got all the motivation. He's got the interest, so he's the one who's looking forward, and Brain is the one who's looking profile, kind of playing aloof. And that is perfect blocking for what's going on inside and as them as characters. Brain's trying to deflect and not give away information, and Brendan's trying to get that information. And so what happens is there's this shot, the Brain shot, and then Brendan comes into frame and bends into frame, which is kind of interesting and an interesting way to block. So it's very economical on what kind of shots he's using. And then we cut to another shot of he's already finished the Rubik's Cube, and they're establishing that this Rubik's Cube, he's really fast at it and he's a really smart guy, hence him being called Brain. And so that's what happens in this first 5 minutes, essentially. And then it's really important. It sets the pacing of the movie. It's a slow, methodical noir film. It's got an inciting incident, this murder, which that's why they cut back in time, and that's why you see it in a lot in film where there's some kind of mystery. You cut back in time to see the thing that causes you to be interested and to start the mystery, and then you cut back in time to get more information. We've gone over the first 5 minutes of this and Scream, Brick and Scream. It's really important that you get the first 5 minutes of your film right. And I want you to study other films, and that's why we're studying the first 5 minutes, because it is how you hook your audience into understanding and feeling like they want to keep watching your movie, because they can quickly click away and not watch your film. So guys, subscribe, smash notifications, hit the like button, give me a comment. I really appreciate you guys.